were applied several times as it relates to the emotions. Post-traumatic growth. MAD. Wow. For those who are online that are experiencing sound issues, please make sure that the mic on your, or the sound, the volume on your computer is up as well. And we'll work on it from our end as well. Thank you. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Now, if you could just take a few moments and answer the second question. And the second question being, which system of support helped you increase your resilience? Which system of support helped you increase your resilience? The first word that pops in my head is my grandmother. Neighbors, people in my neighborhood. There were teachers that helped to build my resilience and increase my resilience and support. Family, absolutely. Community. I think of coaches that I've had in my life. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention one of the most profound, who's here with me today, my wife, Gina, who's right here in the corner, who is definitely a system of support for me. Faith, absolutely. Teachers. Wow, that's filling up. Excellent. The words clouds can be accessed on the First 5 Merced County website a few days after the summit. If you would like to print out a copy for yourself, we'll have more information about how to access the word cloud and the finished art in the email to the link to the evaluation. We'll also be checking in with our artists throughout the day with the big reveal at the end of the day. I'm excited to see that. At this time, I would like to introduce 2 amazing champions for our children in our community. One gentleman is actually an All Dads Matter Boot Camp for New Dad grad, and we're so glad to have him today. He's your very own board of supervisor and my daughter's teacher at Merced High. Please welcome to the stage, and the next second is the executive director of First 5. Please welcome to the stage First 5 Commissioner Chair Josh Pedroso and First 5 Executive Director Mr. Scott Waite.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Lamar. I appreciate the kind words and you emceeing this event today. Good morning and welcome everybody to the Children's Summit. This is a great opportunity to learn and to really focus on the impact that we as adults have on youth and to really make sure that the policies that we move forward are impactful on our youth. As was mentioned, my name is Josh Pedroso. I currently represent District 2 for Merced County, and part of that allows me to chair this committee. As a parent of young children and a former educator, I recognize the importance of early childhood education and making sure that we are addressing the needs of the children, but also their families, so that we can provide them with opportunities to be successful. And that's really important. It takes a whole, if you will, village. You know, the thing about the topic of today is resiliency and fighting for resiliency. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, and Scott is as well. But I want to touch on something real quick. Sometimes people say, Josh, you're so hard-headed. You don't understand. I'm resilient. I want to get this done. I want to make sure I can get it done, make sure I can get it done the right way. And so when I was doing my credential program, one of my first classes, our teacher or professor said, name your top 5 favorite teachers of all time. And one of them wasn't technically a teacher, but she was an aide in our preschool. Her name was Miss Mona, and I couldn't tie my shoes. Believe it or not, I had a hard time tying my shoes when I was 3 or 4 years old. And she kept working with me, and we weren't going to stop until I got it right. And so that's something that still sticks with me, and I still see her today. It's funny, I taught her children were in my class, and her father-in-law was a county supervisor, and so I still see her around and stuff, and it's really cool to have this topic because it really teaches people what it's about and what we need to do. Times with which our youth are still trying to figure out what we need to be those role models to let our children know that even though it's not good now, it's always going to get better. And that's what resiliency is. Making sure that it may not be what's happening at this point in time, but the darkest hours are always before the dawn. So I'm going to leave now and go to Scott.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to take a moment to thank our commissioners. These are people that are professionals in our community. They are community residents, and they take time out of their busy schedules to assist us, help us make decisions, and dedicate their time to making sure that we use the funds available from Prop 10 the best we can. So if they would stand up and remain standing for a round of applause, I have Supervisor Josh Pedroza, Yvonne Brown, Genevieve Valentine, Dr. Salvador Sandoval. We have Aaron Laquia, Cindy Dibley, Paula Smith, Shirley Brown, and our final commissioner is Eva DeLong. Thank you for all that you do to help the commission and help the children of this county.
I wanted to say real quick, we've had a bunch of these meetings, obviously via Zoom, and so this was the first time that I had the opportunity to actually meet Scott in person and see a lot of you in person. Hopefully it gets better sooner rather than later, but I'm incredibly encouraged at the work that you're doing and for you guys taking the time to be a part of this. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So to share a little bit about the history of First Five, why it's here in the county, where it came from, and why it's important. First Five was established in 1999 after California voters passed Proposition 10. It's a state constitutional amendment, and Prop 10 imposed a 50-cent sales tax on every tobacco product sold in the state. Those monies are directed to be used to support early child development, focusing on children prenatal through the age of 5. A driving force behind Prop 10's passage was decades of scientific research into the development of the human brain, providing the proper growth and development in those early years of life. Additionally, Extensive research and longitudinal studies have provided practitioners with evidence about what programmatic strategies work best to support child development in the earliest years and to deliver the exponential return on investment to society, taxpayers, and philanthropy. Each year, approximately $400 million is collected in revenue at the statewide level. 20% of that money goes to First Five California. That is our state regulatory agency. They also fund projects as well. So they help us with a matching grant for what we call impact. It's an effort we use to improve childcare in the county. The remaining 80% of the funds are distributed to each of California's 58 counties based on the birth rates. The law directed each county to establish an independent public commission to oversee Prop 10 dollars and how they are spent, to provide public oversight, accountability, and reporting the effectiveness of those expenditures. If you're ever interested in that process, the second Monday of each month, the commission holds a meeting that's open to the public. We try to do everything we can to make backup materials available to the community. And we also are available at our office to answer questions about that. So if you'd like to get involved to see what we're about, there's that opportunity. In the 22 years since the creation of First Five Merced, we have invested over $70 million from tobacco taxes into programs that support the health and physical, cognitive, and social emotional development of children locally here in Merced County.
It is critical that we keep children as our highest priority. From one end of our county to the other, we are increasingly challenged to successfully provide our children with the things that matter most. The Children's Bill of Rights is an explicit proclamation of the priority that Merced County places on caring for its kids. It identifies critical factors that children need in their lives to develop and grow optimally. In short, it is an overarching vision for children we can collectively strive to achieve. It is very ambitious. It describes what we aspire to in Merced County so that our community standards and choices reflect the priority we place on our children. In many ways, the ultimate usefulness of the Children's Bill of Rights is dependent upon the same collective spirit which drove its creation. There have been many events funded by First Five, of which I'm incredibly proud of. I'm not going to read off the entire list because it's enormous. They range from toy drives to parent classes, Relay for Life, Red Ribbon workshops, and partnerships with the cities to provide activities that most of our youth wouldn't know of or have the opportunity to experience had it not been for this organization. And so for that, we should be very thankful and grateful and appreciative and continue to support these types of events.
So what is resiliency? We know that trauma is a catalyst for resiliency. It allows the opportunity for people to develop it, but it's also something that needs to be fostered. Resiliency is defined by the Human Resilience Project as the capacity to recover from and adapt in the face of adversity, trauma, threats, or stress.
The slide on here that defines resiliency, I know that Scott read through it, but I define resiliency also as being, Merced County residents have been very resilient during this tough time. Something of which, again, I think I keep saying this word proud, but I am. I'm very proud of where we're at as a county. Resiliency to me means steadfast in what you believe, strong in your convictions, and true to yourself. I'm proud to represent Merced County and making sure that we are upholding those. And I'm going to leave you with this quote as it relates to resiliency and what we're trying to focus on with as it relates to the early childhood. In early childhood, you may lay the foundation of poverty or riches, industry or idleness, good or evil, by the habits to which you train your children. Teach them right habits, then and their future life is safe. Even though they might not be related by blood, they are still our community members, and they will be here. We want them here. We need to make sure that we are taking care of them and their families. With that, we'll introduce the pledge. Oh, sorry.
So the purpose of the summit is to bring new ideas and concepts to the county. At the last Children's Summit, we introduced the concept of ACEs, or Adverse Childhood Experiences. At the conclusion of every summit, we do a survey. We ask people for feedback on what went well, what didn't work, what they liked, what they'd like to see repeated. And what we heard back was, what are the next steps? Now what? What do we do? How do we respond? And so we started doing our research into, this is ACEs. We know people have trauma. What's the difference between a child that turns out to what we can see or that develops optimally and one that doesn't, even though they might face the same trauma? And so resiliency is the answer to that question. And so the question became, now that we know the solution is resiliency, how do we build that? How do we foster that in our community? And so we took that feedback and we went out and we researched some really neat people, some really great ideas on their personal experience, and we're bringing that to you for the 2021 Children's Summit. I just would like to remind you how important those feedback and the information you share with us at the end of the event is to shape the future. We want this event to be responsive to the community, and we want it to be relevant to the community as well. So please take the time to fill out those surveys at the end. We really do read them. We really do use them. So thank you for joining us for the summit. We are excited about the rest of the day. And now we're going to introduce the pledge. So if everyone would please rise. We have an elementary school class. For their safety and ours, we've had them join us through video. So we will be sharing that there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you guys all very much for being here. This is a great event. As you can tell, Scott and I aren't Laurel and Hardy, but we did our best, so thank you.
Great job. Please give it up one more time for Josh Pedroso and Mr. Scott Waite. Wow. It's interesting because as I reflect and I see the video and I think of resilience and I think of ACEs in particular, I remember the first time I became aware of ACEs, and it was probably about 2012, if not earlier, and I was introduced to it by a pioneer for ACEs, Dave Lockridge, in our community. And my team and I completed the ACE Overcomers 3-day training. And I tell you, it had a profound effect on me. It really did. It shifted my thinking from what's wrong with me to what happened to me. And it also, I love the word resilience. I love that because for me, that was hope. That I did not need to stay in that state of trauma. That I could move spiritually and physically to a place of safety, or I could be at my best, which is what we want for our children in our community. Safety, resilience, enrichment. And I think every single one of us who are here, if in person or online, virtually, are here because you feel that same draw and that same commitment. So as Scott shared and as Josh shared as well, we're very, very proud to be here with you today. And you know what? Even though I'm a transplant, you know, my introduction is I was raised in Bakersfield, but I grew up in Merced, in this amazing community. So part of my resilience and my support team is definitely my time here in Merced and my commitment and connection to this county. Everywhere I go, I run into community. Everywhere I go, I feel a sense of family, and it's right here within our community. So, yes, I'm so proud to be here to represent this county. So one more time for Merced County, please. At this time, I'd like to introduce our planning committee members. Excuse me. I've never seen this happen on the Emmys. So our planning committee members would include first 5 of Merced County, Merced County Human Services Agency, the Merced County Office of Education, the Merced County Probation, Urbanist, the Family Resource Center, the Merced County Department of Public Health, Aspirinet, Hope Forward, and AmeriCorps Seniors. Please give our planning committee members a round of applause, because we couldn't do it without you. Some of our sponsors include Castle Family Health Centers, United Way, and Early Educators. So please give them a round of applause as well. Excuse me just a moment. Now I'd like to introduce some of our dignitaries. Some who are here today, some of our dignitaries: Rodrigo Espinoza, Merced County Board of Supervisor. And if you're here, please stand. Bertha Perez, City of Merced City Council Member. Mr. Jesse Ornalis, City of Merced City Council Member. Gilbert Herbert, representing Jim Costa, Congressman. Joyce Dale, representing Ana Caballero, Senator. And let me say, if you've ever read any of Joyce's poetry, it'll change your life. Trust me. Ryan Heller, representing Adam Gray, Assemblyman. District 21. Please give them a round of applause. And we also want to take a moment to thank some of these amazing volunteers in our community who brought this event to fruition today. The tremendous amount of work and the teamwork that came to bringing you this Children's Summit was amazing. Led by, First 5 and Scott and Marie Pickney and her team, she put together a team of volunteers and helping professionals to make sure that we can be the most impactful that we possibly can at the 2021 Children's Summit. So please give them a round of applause. All right, one of my favorite segments. At this moment, we're preparing for the introduction of our hands-on heroes. I was honored to be honored with the hands-on heroes the very first year, and I can tell you that like many of us who were nominated and all of us who work in our community, there are hands-on heroes everywhere you turn. Right? There are those folks who do amazing things for children that never get mentioned because that's just what they do. That's just what we do. We're the people who see that kid that don't have enough money to buy something at the store and chip in, or even that kid that winks at that kid in the grocery cart as they're looking at us with our mask on, right? I always am amazed at these children born in the pandemic, right? That they can recognize people from the nose up. They can read your eyes, trust me. And we wink at them. Those who truly care, those of us where children run to when they need that support. These are some of our hands-on heroes. They voluntarily put themselves in a position to be champions for children, because that's what they're called to do. And our presenter is an amazing champion for children. I've had the privilege of knowing Ms. Patty Kishi since I started with Merced County so many years ago. I think we started with Leader. We did the leadership program, and she has been consistently an advocate and a champion for children. So how appropriate it is for her to introduce this year's Hands-On Hero Awards. So please, let's put our hands together and show our love for the amazing Ms. Patty Kishi.
As a member of the Children's Summit Committee, I'm honored to present the Hands-On Heroes Awards this year. The revered Frederick Douglass once stated that it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. These 5 recipients today and 3 nominees are doing just that. Here's a little history about the program. This year marks the 10th anniversary of this award program. Hands-On Heroes was introduced to the Commission the same year that the Children's Bill of Rights was adopted by Merced County. In 2011, First 5 Merced County, the Family Wellness Council, the Match Coalition, the Week of the Young Child Committee, and the Los Banos Community Resource Council chose the first 6 people as the first recipients of the annual Hands-On Heroes Awards. The winners were identified as persons who had gone above and beyond in supporting children in ways that embody the Children's Bill of Rights for Merced County, a document that has been overwhelmingly supported by both public and private businesses in the county. The 6 honored in 2011 were Lamar Henderson, Louis Lemuz, Megan Collier, Phyllis Legg, Richard Mahachek, and Paul Munoz. At this time, we did not have specific categories for the winners. However, the program has evolved, and the need to carve out specific sectors grew. This year, we're honoring 5 new award winners and introducing 2 new Hands-On Heroes categories: Excellence in Stewardship and Healthcare Provider. We've incorporated some changes into the award presentation in order to keep folks safe during COVID-19. The first change is obviously the virtual setting. The second is our use of pre-recorded videos for the nominators and winners. And last but not least, we will also be highlighting nominees that received our I'm a Hero for Kids star. So, without further ado, here are our winners. Hands-On Hero Educator, a teacher or child care provider whose commitment to children goes beyond the traditional teacher-provider relationship. Educators who empower young children create a love for lifelong learning and instill values that go beyond the educational environment. I'd like to introduce Kathleen Mcelwain.
Kathleen Mcelwain has taught at Franklin School for over 30 years. She is from a military family who's come here 47 years ago. Well, I looked at the principles of what you wanted, or what about children, children's rights. And I looked at it and I thought, oh my gosh, Kathleen has done every one of those things. She definitely is a candidate for this. No other teacher that I know has ever done all these things, every one of them. She taught at Franklin Elementary School, 2nd grade, for 30 years. And she was very proud to be there and happy that she could help all those children over the years. And parents have come back to her and wanted their children to come into her class because they have such happy memories of her teaching them. And they laugh when they remember she made them pick up papers on the schoolyard. She was very environmentally conscious. Kathleen would always try to have rich learning experiences in her classroom, and she invited a mother to come in and teach sign language to the children so that they could understand the difficulties, and the children delighted in learning how to say, I like you and be my friend. And they went and practiced until they got it, and they took papers home to their parents and taught their family to use. It's always good to be able to learn other people's languages and cultures if you can, and help them to understand. And she constantly would tell them, it's nice to be nice. She can relate to the struggles of the students because of her struggles growing up. She was born prematurely and has had leg braces, many exercises, physical therapy, and many operations. But she's had a lot of help along the way, and therefore she's very strong, makes her this very strong, independent, self-reliant person that she is today. She, the little children, when teaching them a little fraction, she'd put her finger down and say, a centimeter is about as big as your little finger, your fingernail there. And they got it, and they pay attention to her, and they love the way she teaches. She teaches with kindness. Made them feel, not have any prejudice towards them, and to make them feel good about themselves. And the children taught them it's nice to be nice and to never laugh at anybody. She had that skill, and she showed it and practiced herself every day.
My name is Kathleen Mcelwain. I was a teacher at Franklin Elementary School for 30 years. I loved teaching second grade. I started actually before I became a teacher at the migrant camp, and then I started teaching Spanish bilingual second grade. And I just stayed there the whole time because that's where I was needed. Everyone there is truly a family, and a welcoming family. Everybody works together, and it's a special place. So I have been blessed to work there. This last year was difficult for teachers and for parents and for families, and so I was really proud of my students, how they were able to learn how to Zoom, and their parents were able to learn how to do it too. I had to learn, and I had a lot of help from my colleagues. For anyone who is thinking of becoming a teacher, go ahead and do it. It's really a wonderful, joyful profession. It's very meaningful. I've really enjoyed the last 30 years, and I'll probably go back and substitute and volunteer because it's a wonderful profession. If you want to make a difference, be a teacher.
Introducing Kathleen Mcelwain. Congratulations. Hands-on Heroes Community Service, a community member or organization that makes efforts to provide special events or unique opportunities for children at low or no cost to their families. Let me introduce Jennifer Johnson.
So Jennifer, like I said, we started doing with her, I started doing the Santa Day event. And what we do is we basically do a lot of fundraising when it comes to toys for less fortunate kids. We try to focus on like certain areas like Planada, La Grande, but also what we started doing is doing it for kids that are in the foster care program. That's kind of one of her passions, so that's what we kind of focus, the less fortunate kids out there. The past 2 years, we've been actually focusing on older kids, 14, 15-year-olds and above, because a lot of those kids are kind of like the forgotten ones that they don't get any gifts. So we actually started doing more like gift cards, and a lot of them, I didn't realize that at 17 they start kind of moving on their own. So we started getting stuff like blankets, utensils and stuff like that. Her passion, I'm telling you, it's that drive that she has. I know a couple of years ago she was actually sick, and I was shocked to see her at the shopping day with us, and I was like, oh, you're supposed to, you're sick, you're supposed to be at bed, and she was like, no, this is my passion. So that's just tells you a little bit of how Jennifer is. And I've actually had a group of people tell me before that that when they were little, they received toys from our charitable work, and it makes you feel good. She's very good at delegating, very good at organizing, and just reaching out to the community and reaching out to people. So this can work.
Back in 2008, I opened a Starbucks over here off of Applegate in Atwater. And I remember that very first Christmas, we did a toy drive. And when the people came in, it was through a different organization. And when the people came in to collect the toys, so I asked the question of, hey, how do you distribute the toys? Where are they going? And what I learned in that conversation was that all of the toys that we were collecting within the community were actually being taken and given to communities in other counties. And so for me, that following year, I met up with Shane Ferreira, so he is a CHP officer as well. And in 2009, we decided to start Santa Day. And so the purpose and the goal behind that was that our mission is that every toy that is donated within Merced County will be given to children in need within Merced County. I believe it was 2017 when Eric Zunica and then shortly after Jason Tipler joined with us. MIG Construction has been part of the Santa Day Toy Drive from about 2009, 2010. So from the very beginning, we've had a really close relationship with Jessica, Matt Migliazzo, Ashley Migliazzo. So as a manager of Starbucks, I work with a lot of different people over the years. And a couple of years ago, I was sitting at my desk and I was talking about Santa Day with another manager, and I had a partner come in the back room, and I don't want to be emotional, but I had a partner come in the back room, and she said to me, she goes, I was one of those kids. And I had another partner doing dishes, and she says, oh yeah, I was too. And it kind of stopped me in my tracks, and I said, well, what are you talking about? They said, well, we were kids that received your toys, but we didn't know that you were the one behind Santa Day, and that you were the one that actually was running this with MIG Construction and with the CHP for all these years. It's not about necessarily anybody knowing who is doing it as much as it is why we do it. And why we do it is because every single kid deserves to have a great Christmas, regardless of what's going on. It's not their fault that they're in the situation that they're in. There's a lot of behind the scenes hustle to make it all happen. But just, delivering those toys and getting everything sent out to the families at the end of the day, that is so rewarding, and it's truly why we do what we do. And, right now it's still summer and we're planning Christmas. So, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to get to what we do, but it's worth it every year.
Jennifer Johnson. Congratulations. Hands on Heroes Business, a business that supports initiatives for children or makes a difference for youth in Merced County. Introducing Jesus Haro.
Several of the reasons why I nominated Jesus Haro for the Hands on Hero Award is number one, it's a really safe environment and it's a focused environment. And this gym is probably the most respectful gym that I've been a part of. You have kids who are street kids, literally, who may act a certain way outside of this gym, but when they get here, they have their routine set up, then they get to work. They understand that they're a part of a team and they represent a team. Well, I think this community is lucky to have him not only as a coach, but as a citizen. Coach is really dedicated to his work. He's really dedicated to the kids in the sense that, and he's got all the credentials that he needs to be able to take these kids and help them become something, you know, through hard work and through discipline. So I would say that I hope that through this nomination and with Coach Haro receiving the Hands of Hero Award, because everything here is all volunteer. Everything is volunteer, everything is volunteer. The kids come first, and it's an awesome, dedicated team, and it's a very nice family-oriented environment.
Jesus Haro is one of them guys that kind of flies under the radar, very humble. He doesn't look for recognition. However, he's somebody that really needs to be recognized as a mentor and as a staple in South Merced that does great work with youth. I've known Coach Haro for probably a little over 15 years. And I first was introduced to him because myself, I was an ex-professional fighter, and now I coach. And so my job was to get familiar with a lot of coaches in Merced. And so he's one of the coaches I reached out to when I needed help teaching a kids class. His son, who's a pro fighter, volunteered to come and work with my kids. And I just thought that was awesome. And I had to meet Jesus because, you know, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And, you know, to have a son that young willing to volunteer and donate time to help youth, he had to have an awesome father. And so when I met Jesus, sure enough, I mean, he's one of our diamonds in the rough here in Merced. There's a saying, and the saying says, don't follow someone who says the right things, rather follow someone who does the right things. And whenever I think of that saying, I think of Jesus, because he's constantly modeling what it is to exhibit hard work, passion, perseverance. When you're talking about guiding youth, it's not really what we say, it's what we do, right? A child is not gonna remember too much of what we tell them, but they'll always remember how we made them feel. If you look around this gym, you'll see championship belts, right? And I don't think he creates champions because he's necessarily the best coach. He creates champions because the kids see a champion in him and his work ethic. He has championship work ethic and everything that I talked about. He has championship character, championship integrity. And that's why, in my mind, there's no greater person to receive this award. Especially when you're talking about a hero, I mean, his name might as well be Jesus Hero, not Jesus Haro, right? And so, I mean, let's give him his due, and I believe he's well deserving of this award.
I decided to open up the boxing club for my kids. They were interested. You know, I trained as a kid, I loved it, you know, my sons really loved it, so I started it up in 2012. My sons were already training before then, but I started my own at 2012, and we started out in my backyard in my house for a couple years. Then as our classes grew bigger, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna take the risk and I'm gonna rent a spot out and see what happens. And 4 years later, here we are. One of the rules I have at my gym is we treat each other like family, treat each other with respect, everybody help each other out, whether you're pro or amateur. You know, you be there for one another, and they are. And over time, you know, these kids end up getting so familiarized here, like this is their sanctuary. And you know, and they come back, oh, he's doing so much better in school. His behaviors change. He's doing so much better. Thank you so much. He has something to look forward to. His confidence is up, and you know that to us, it's an award in itself. The thing I would want these kids or the parents to think these kids walk away with is knowing that these kids leaving here know they have a chance to make it in life. Have the confidence to go forward and do whatever they want to do, and go forward with confidence, discipline, respect, I guess you can say I want to make sure that every kid grows up with the confidence to change the better of Merced, you know. Every kid that we help out, I feel, will make the community just that much better. And that's, man, that's like the ultimate goal here.
Jesus Haro. Congratulations. Hands-on heroes, excellence in stewardship. An outstanding individual that worked outside of the scope of their specific job duties in order to meet the needs of children and families served by their organization. Here is Susan Ledesma.
Susan is our department secretary at MCSD's award-winning preschool program. She's been with preschool for about 15 years and been department secretary for the last 4. Susan is the definition of creating nurturing relationships for children. Susan does that both by engaging with the parents and the families, the staff here at our preschool, and the kids. Let me give you an example of how Susan is really the glue that keeps the preschool together. So she is the office secretary. She's the first point of contact for parents when they come in to interface with our preschool program. And oftentimes she has to help the parents get the resources they need out of the school system, fill out forms. Many of our parents are not themselves native English speakers. And Susan, she's willing to make herself feel vulnerable for a minute and help our Spanish-speaking parents figure out the forms, not being fluent in Spanish herself. And she's also a point of contact for staff. So another example, during the pandemic, staff were all located at their homes or other parts of the school site, wherever they were sheltering in place. Didn't have a lot of chance to get together. Susan was sort of that point of contact where staff would check in from wherever they are, create a sense of cohesion, positive feeling, check in, make sure people are doing well. And Susan really exemplified for folks the mantra of an open mind and an open heart. I nominated Susan both because of who she is and what she's accomplished for the district. I really felt like recognition for Susan is long overdue and well deserved. As I said, she's been our department secretary for 4 years. She's been a big part, under 2 different directors, of making MCSD's preschool program the award-winning program that it is. And she deserves that recognition for helping guide the ship, maintaining the operation, keeping everybody together and focused, helping parents interface with the program, and just generally creating an environment where children can thrive. Susan absolutely goes above and beyond her job duties.
So just yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, I was helping a little girl get registered who is in custody of grandma. And when I told grandma, I came out to tell grandma, okay, we've got everything ready. I had complimented the little girl on her shoes. She had really cute Converse on. And so I said, I'm gonna go to lunch, but she's ready. She should be able to start tomorrow. And the little girl looked at me and just hugged my legs so tight. She was so excited to start school. It just it almost made me cry because I was like, oh, I just totally made that little girl's life. She's so happy to start school. I used to work in middle school for years. And so I went from helping prepare kids for graduation and go to high school to where they're leaving our district to where they're just starting our district and starting their journey. So I went from one end of the spectrum to the other. So it was quite an adjustment. But the little ones, they just take your hand and they just want that support, and they just want somebody to look at them and be their friend. When my oldest, who's 27 now, when she was young, we lived up in the Bay Area, and I had done all this research. I wasn't in education yet. I had done all this research to try to get just the perfect school for her to go to. and turned out to not be such a perfect school for her, was not a good fit. I mean, we're in the Bay Area, so there's thousands and thousands and thousands of kids, but she was just a number there. And when we moved back here, I was trying to get her into our GATE program. And they looked at her test scores and they said, okay, yeah, she absolutely qualifies. Up there, she was a number. She had missed one thing on a test and they wouldn't let her in. Here, they didn't look just at her, but they looked at her, who she was, her academics, her extracurriculars, everything about her, and said she qualified. And that really made a difference for her. So I wanted to be able to do that for other parents. I don't want the kids to feel like they're just a number, or the families to feel like they're just a number in our system. So it's just nice to have that person-to-person contact, because then they feel like they're really being heard and they're really being cared after. And especially when they're little ones, you know, they're trusting us with their 3-year-olds and their 4-year-olds, and that's really scary. I mean, my own grandson just started our program, and my own daughter was like, Mom, what do I do? What if he cries? And I was like, he's fine. He's gonna be fine. He's gonna cry, and you're gonna remember years from now, but he won't, and he'll be okay. And so being able to reassure parents like that and let them know that they're in the best hands, regardless of the child's age, whatever the situation, I think that's really important.
Susan Ledesma. Congratulations. Hands-on Heroes healthcare provider, a clinician that goes above and beyond the scope of their practice for the betterment of kids in our communities 0 to 18. Introducing Dr. Asadi.
The reason why I thought of Dr. Asadi right away when I read about the Hands-on Hero Award was that she basically was the only thing last year and also early this year especially in our community that's helping out. I know COVID kind of put a lot of things on hold, but she stepped up and definitely, take care of not only the healthcare professional, but also later on to a lot of parents, a lot of elderly people, basically whoever you need of the vaccine. So Dr. Asadi made children one of the highest priority by being an esteemed pediatrician in Merced. My staff and many others that I know have had the pressure of having their children in her care. From 2020 to early this year, COVID-19 was the only thing in our society, and definitely our community highest priority. She leads the vaccine effort and recruits different professionals to vaccinate our residents. Besides vaccine effort, she has a full-time pediatric medical practice and also leads at the hospital. Dr. Asadi is my hero for 2020 and 2021.
Dr. Asadi brings exceptional quality care to the children of Merced County in 2 main ways that I can think of. She has been our medical director for over 20 years, and she's been with us in the ups and downs. She's been with us as many doctors have come and gone. She has always been there to make sure the babies get the quality care close to home. Otherwise, many of these babies would be transferred to Valley Children's in Madera. I thought of Dr. Asadi for Hands-on Hero because when COVID hit, Dr. Asadi started testing right away for the COVID. And also when the vaccine was released, Dr. Asadi quickly organized a very large group of nurses and doctors that she's known for many years. And we have vaccinated thousands of people in Merced County.
When I saw the application for Hands on Heroes, I thought of Dr. Asadi immediately because she has been a crucial partner to me at the Public Health Department and also to our community throughout the COVID response. Outside of her office, outside of her pediatric hours, held mass clinics throughout the community. She did them in Merced City, she did them in Planada, she did them in her parking lot. She was all over, and her team of volunteers vaccinated more people in the community than almost every other healthcare provider. So she really put her money where her mouth was in a real way. She said from the very beginning, this is an adult pandemic that's affecting our kids. So the second that a solution came to end the pandemic, to have our adults step up and protect our kids, she was out there every single day doing that as much as she possibly could.
I'm originally from San Jose. I was born to immigrant parents. I was the first female to go to a university. I was the first person in my family to go to professional school. I knew I wanted to be a doctor when I was 15. I myself am a damaged child, so it took until medical school to figure out that my passion was going to be working with children. Over a year ago was the first time I presented myself to the leadership in Merced County, and I presented myself as the quote expert on children through this pandemic. And many of the things that I told them then still hold true now, and the fight's not over. So I will continue to fight for them, advocate for them, but I will do whatever I can in the capacity that I can to ensure that these kids do go back to school. That role took many different flavors. I was the lab director for many schools for their COVID testing. I also participated in many vaccination clinics at the schools, and moving forward I'm going to cultivate that further. I'm going to start a project with other clinics here in town. We're going to move forward with potentially providing vaccines directly to the school systems because people trust their schools. They trust the school administration. Most people are within walking distance of a school. And so I believe that that is really the next forefront of our fight in this battle, is to get kids back into school and to get vaccine to as many people as we can.
Dr. Asadi. Congratulations. So congratulations to all of the 2021 winners this year. We would also like to recognize the honorable mention individuals who were nominated this year. They also do great work in our community. We have Monica Adrian, Angelica Dilsaver, and Kathy Renee Larson. Thank you to all of our community nominators and recipients of recognition for this year. Congratulations. And now back to Lamar.
Thank you, Patty. Please give it up one more time for Miss Patty Kishi. Wow, what a moving presentation. So many amazing people, so many amazing spirits in our community. Coach Haro, I saw my nephew in your video. Dude, don't make me cry in here, okay? I'm a grown man. Dr. Asadi, you know, I've seen so many people in here that have touched our families' lives, personally, you know, and it's amazing. I think about Dr. Asadi, and she's Dr. Asadi all the time, okay? So when I run into her at the grocery store, and her son's like, Mom, can we just pick a cereal and get out of here? She and I are having a 15-minute conversation about what we can do to promote vaccination, because our Hands on Heroes are just that committed. Coach Haro, Dude, I was talking to Sam the other day, and we are talking about how sometimes you just got to get it done. And you got that in you. You got that just get it done. Starting from your backyard and moving to a building now, to give those kids an identity, a positive influence, someone who believes in them, all of us need that. All of us need that. I had a Coach Howell in my life. Mr. Scott, he was my PE teacher. And I know the profound effect that you have had on these children's lives. You'll never know. It's not for you to know, but the profound effect that you've had on these children's lives. And I'm thankful to all of you for the work that you do, because every single one of you could easily be a hands-on hero, whether you're in this room or online. The fact that you get up and come to work every day, and I liken it to superheroes, right? What I love about superheroes is the duality of it, right? Superheroes they live an everyday average life, right? We think about the kid who was a nerd in school, right? Bullied. He was living with his aunt and his uncle. He was basically a foster kid because his parents had passed. He goes to the store with his uncle, and through a tragic, traumatic event, his uncle gets killed right in front of him. So now here he is, living with his aunt, who's struggling financially, who's trying to hold it up. But by happenstance, he goes on a field trip to a museum where he gets bit by a radioactive spider, right? You know the story, right? He loves this girl, he's a cute girl he likes in school, but he's stuck in the friend zone. Can't get out of the friend zone. He's like, if you could just see me in my red and blue suit. Right? That's us. That's all of you online. Even though we go through a difficult pandemic and it's affecting all of our lives, and we have challenges and family members that have behavioral health issues, or children that are struggling academically, or more month than money, we cross that threshold every morning and put that towel around our neck and become a superhero for someone else. And I applaud you, and I salute you for that amazing work. At this time, we want to take a chance and pan over to, take a moment and pan over our artists' work, Patty and the Urban Collective, and the amazing work that they're doing with our, no, we're not. I'm getting the no from Marie back there. Okay, we got you. Very good. So at this time, I think what we're going to do is go into a break. Yes? Okay? So take 15 minutes, refresh yourself. I believe there's some refreshments in the lobby. If you're online, get up and take your 15-minute break. I know some folks are counting their steps, so do that if you need to, and we will see you back in 15 minutes. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you. I'm still reeling and really impacted by our hands-on heroes and be able to speak with them in the lobby. You know, my granddaughter's in the 2nd grade right now. So when we're talking about the 2nd grade teacher, I'm like, that's what I'm talking about right there. You know, and it's amazing to see all these amazing people in here. I was talking to Dr. Sandoval before the event started. And I was like, man, I can trust a message coming from him because he's been here with us forever. I remember these conversations nearly 20 years ago, you know, with him and his wife, Mrs. Sandoval, who pretty much runs the show, but anyway. he'll admit to that, and how passionate and driven they are about health equity in our community and the health of our county. So when I hear messages from Dr. Sandoval, I can trust and listen and know that he has absolutely our best interest in mind. So thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Sandoval. Wow, pretty good so far, huh? Give yourselves a round of applause. We back in the house in this beautiful theater. Hopefully soon we'll see it full again, right? But it's full of wonderful spirits today, absolutely. I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment and acknowledge my amazing All Dads Matter team, who are just so passionate about driven to support fathers and families in our community. So if you just bear with me, I'll just take a moment and just introduce them. There's 2 folks who are not here today with us, Everardo Sahagun, who has been with us for quite a while, and Joanne Ramirez, who is our OA and basically keeps us all corralled. You know, she's everything, you know, behind the scenes with All Dads Matter. But at this moment, I'd like to acknowledge some of the guys that are here with us today. And if you would stand when I call your name, Mr. Adrian Espinoza, Mr. Steve Bauer, and Mr. Sam Rango. 3 of our team members that are out there in the evenings, all over the county at outreach events. So when you see them, say what's up and give those guys an amazing pat on the back. So as I'm thinking about this summit, I can't help but reflect on previous years. You know, and it's amazing I'm sitting here as the MC when I reflect on the fact that Judge McCabe was always here, right? This was his spot, the sweater vest, right? and the jokes, the bad dad jokes. Yes, yes. He was famous for that and brought an amazing spirit. So I'm truly honored to be here today to act as MC for this amazing event. The connection from last year, okay. So, sorry about that. Connection from last year's 2019 and the speaker topic. Earlier, we participated in an activity that focused on the original ACEs study conducted from 1995 to 1997. The data collected in the 90s relied on a specific population which happened to be white, middle upper class participants, and focused on experiences within their home. The more recent study, which was conducted in 2012 to 2013 by the Philadelphia ACE Project, the data collected as part of the study focused on an urban environment and measured stressors not covered in the original ACE study. The Philadelphia Expanded ACEs study was developed to understand the impact of community-level adversities, such as witnessing violence, felt discrimination, adverse neighborhood experiences, being bullied, and living in foster care. Our keynote speaker will be sharing her story of resilience as a result of dealing with some of these ACEs identified in the Philadelphia study. Our keynote today is Ms. Maria Guadalupe Jaime Milheim. She is the newly appointed Deputy Director of the Child Care and Development Division at the California Department of Social Services. Jaime Milheim has been the Senior Director of Early Care and Education in the County of Fresno, Superintendent of Schools since 2014. She was Deputy Director of the Central Valley Children's Network from 2009 to 2014, an adjunct infant toddler instructor at Wested Partner for Quality Infant and Toddler Caregiving from 2009 to 2014, and subsidized manager for the Central Valley Children's Services Network from 2001 to 2009. She is a member of the Early Childhood Policy Council, National Association for the Education of Young Children, and the County Offices of Education Program Administrators for Child Development. Jaime Milheim earned a Doctorate of Education degree from California State University, Fresno in Educational Leadership and a Master's in Education degree from National Universities in Cross-Cultural Education. Please put your hands together and welcome to the stage our amazing keynote speaker, Dr. Jaime Milheim.
So, buenos dias, good morning, and again, I'm Maria Guadalupe Jaime de Milheim, but I can be referenced as Lupe. I smile, Lamar, because we go way back when we did the Infant Mental Health Foundations, and we were in a group together. So definitely a small world. So for my presentation today, I have the privilege of being able to be with you for the next hour or so, just to be able to be, in a sense, a bit vulnerable. I talk about vulnerable because with that comes my story and who I am, as far as the lens of resilience, but also speaking about how ACEs in itself reflects on some of our families. In the capacity that I have now, it is definitely at the forefront of this work. I had recently had a job change where in March I was selected as the Deputy Director for the California Department of Social Services Child Development Division. That's really significant in some ways because it is a brand new division for the administration, where the funding that was initially under the Department of Education, that are the early childhood dollars, all shifted over to the Department of Social Services, with the exception of state preschool that is still being administered through the California Department of Education. And so you wonder about what a big shift that is for us to be able to shift these dollars into a new division and start this effective July 1st. I think I've heard from other states that this is done in several years planning, but of course California, record-breaking, did it in a year. And we'll talk about that towards the end of my keynote to just talk about the significance of that change, which I think will be definitely something to keep in mind as we're looking at our programs and we're looking at our services that serve our children and thinking about the whole child, whole family approach with this too. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So we recognize a few things. Let me do a side note here. So what I do is I tend to use photos in my presentations on my family. I share that because couple reasons. One is just because I mentioned a clause about not taking photos of the photos, just because it is my particular family, and my siblings might find it weird if they see them on social media. And then the second piece is that it is our story, right? For us to share and to be able to share with the community. And so therefore you'll see some photos here. I'll try to walk you through the gallery of photos as I'm doing the keynote, so there's connections to what I'm also referencing to in this case. In this case, it's my niece Violet, and we were able to capture a photo when she was unhappy about something. I think she was maybe a little bit over a year at the time. But at times I think this is, when I think of the pandemic and the impact of that pandemic, and especially what it has continued to affect our families of color at these disproportional rates. I think of Violet, of her look there, of how in a sense we feel a bit hopeless at times, really thinking about the impact that it has created on us. And I also think about the disparities that already existed within our communities, and this further then really amplified those disparities in a sense. And although it seems at times a bit overwhelming and a bit helpless, I can say that there's always resilience and hope. and many of you testament to that with the Hands-On Hero Award earlier, that just gave us that glimpse of what that can be done even during a pandemic to make sure that we're really reaching out to our communities itself. And so as part of this work, then I do want to then focus and centralize my speech around my personal journey as part of this piece in conjunction with the work around ACEs itself. So we know that ACEs, right, that is adverse childhood experience, has a tremendous impact in lifelong health and opportunities, right? And this has been already established by numerous research before us to come together. And so as we're looking at ACEs with our families, I also want to remind us that that is just one little piece of information that we know about our families. And so although we know that it has some detrimental impacts without the proper supports, we also know that ACEs don't define who we are. And I can definitely speak to myself in regards to that aspect of how that is, you know, that is just one piece of who I am, and there is so much more to speak about this work. And so we're working with families with high ACEs, then those experiences of those families then may not recognize the resilience that are seen through different matrix. And I talk about different matrix because we have our traditional matrix that are centered to sometimes look through a deficit lens, but then we also have other matrix that we want to capture the capita that people bring and our communities bring to this work that they have, you know, moving forward. In terms of the resilience, then I want to start my personal journey with my grandparents. And so this is a photo of my grandparents that is up. And my father is right in the middle, standing up tall and, you know, in that photo. And my grandfather was a U.S. citizen, and he lived and worked in Chicago at the time with the railroads. And so he did the trip back home, which for us was Torreon, Mexico. And then that was the journey. And somewhere along the way, he decided that his other siblings were moving into California to do the farm work labor. And so he decided that he would want to do that, and slowly started to help bring the children over to migrate to this country to support then that type of labor work that we did. So as a result, then we were classified as migrant farm workers in a sense. In our place, we would generally be outside of Sacramento, following the crops around that area. I still remember the journey from when I was young, of being able to travel from that area in the wintertime, making ourselves maybe like in November, going back down the state through a couple states, down the border, and then into Coahuila, which was not too far down, and staying there for a few months and then coming back up. And so at times then we think of that journey, and we think about what are the different experiences that we had. One, living in a vehicle, right? And some people classify that as homeless. I never saw it as homeless. I had everything I needed in that. Even though we were bundled up, we had everything we needed there. So thinking about ACEs. And then the second piece is thinking about food insecurity, thinking about the experience of the education system within that trajectory, and other factors that we may think that definitely puts us at a disadvantage of being able to really look at how we can succeed with those type of pieces. And so as a result then, we were classified as hard to reach, right? Or at risk, uneasy to locate. And I look at it a bit interesting when we look at those phrases for many reasons. And let's go to the next slide. And the reason for that is because we had the same migration patterns. And so therefore, you know, for someone to say they can't find us is a little bit interesting, because it wasn't like we were lost or something. I used two photos to exhibit this as a piece, and definitely pull from my Facebook on this, because I do have the dearest friends. One is that my friends say that I'm hard to reach, and so they posted a photo of me driving up to Starbucks to say, if you've seen her, please, you know, Return her back. Lupe is spotted in her natural habitat at the Starbucks drive-thru. Please alert the walking crew if you spotted her again. She needs to join them on the walking trail, right? So that's an example of, the traditional methods that we may look at someone to try to find them. But guess what? We're not all at the Starbucks, right? That's not our traditional place to be for many of our families that we typically look for them in certain areas. The other piece that I have there is the old-fashioned milk carton. Have you seen me, right? And then they putting me on that to be able to locate me. Families are not that easily, when we think of families and we think of this work and you think of what individuals had to do to connect with us, these traditional methods are not the ideal methods to reach our families. And thinking down about how people reached us and the capacity that we were, made really concerned efforts to target us, to come to us, to bring those services we need. One more layer to add on to this is that we lived outside of Sacramento in the River Delta. And if you know the area well, the River Delta is made up of different islands. And the islands are connected by ferry boats or bridges. It's beautiful if you ever get a chance to just drive out there and fish or look at the area. But it makes it really remote. Even to this day, when I go visit my parents, I literally have to end up putting my cell phone up near a tree to try to get a bar to be able to even have access to technology. So definitely a digital divide in that area. The second piece is transportation. We don't have a bus that comes out and picks us up or anything of that sort. And you could easily get lost if you don't know the area, easily just because of how, how the islands are connected and difficult to see. So anyone that would come out to really target us for services would really want to be out there. And we knew that. We knew that they were out there to provide us services because of all these different pieces that we knew were important that they had to struggle to. But nevertheless, even with all these different factors that we were so-called unable to reach, people did reach us. We were, as a family of 5, me being the oldest, and my parents working in the fields, I remember the government cheese and butter and those boxes that they provided us that seemed to get us through the winter time, and somebody coming out there and taking it to us, which were the local firefighters. I remember them stacking them up and taking them to the island and making their way, and because they're the trusted messengers, right? Like many of you are. That we know, we recognize that we would be able to, accept your support because you see us and you recognize who we are and recognize our vulnerability, and there's no judgment. The key thing is that they're there to support and make sure that we have a meal. And so things to just keep in mind as we're doing this work. Let's go to the next slide. So let me jump to a little bit about my upbringing. And I think I've referenced that at times we had a vehicle that we stayed in, which you could see in the background, the yellow pickup there, the old Cheyenne. That was commonly in some of the photos just because that's where we got together. Although there was existence of food insecurity within our family, love the phrase of food insecurity, the family capita that was brought in to address that food insecurity was very unique. And it was unique in many ways. One is that this is an example of informal get-together that families would get together. And everyone would bring a little bit of everything. You can notice that there is, in a sense, everybody would sit either on a box or they would bring in these chairs. So very informal. People would all pitch in. And next thing you know, you had food for the collective group. I would tell you one thing, though. You would have to eat very quickly because the food was scarce. And so, but even with that said and done, there was a lot of family capita to ensure that everyone had what they needed and everyone checked in with each other. And within the photo, the other piece that I would call out is that although we had our nuclear family with our extended aunts and uncles that were part of our family, we also had our community family that was part of this upbringing. And the community would make sure that, that somebody there was able to check on somebody else, in a sense. Many times it was, I called everyone uncle and aunt, and it wasn't until much older that I learned that they weren't even related, by blood. But that was how close the family was in terms of the community living and being able to bring that support into the family, that everyone was family, though it wasn't not blood family. And so very important to call that out as one of the capitas that many of our, of our families may bring with them. And in my case, that's what that happened. Let's go to the next slide. I think I touched on this a little. And so traveling around in different places, and I can't remember how many homes we've had. It was very traditional for the way that we grew up that the farmer would provide the housing for the farm workers out in the river delta, and at no cost. And the housing obviously was not the greatest. Sometimes we didn't have electricity, sometimes the water wasn't working, so we had boiled water. We cooked outside, for example, a lot. That's why when people say, are you gonna go camping? I've done that in my life. Camping to me means something different, but just a different perspective of that. I know my husband's trying to make me understand the concept of camping, but it's, that was what we grew up with. And so it was common for us then to be able to have a different lifestyle of living, which included these old trailers that we all ended up trying to have dibs on, and several families were then, being able to live in these old trailers, for example, that I have there. That included then, I remember all the children would sleep in the living room, just on the ground. All of us had our blankets, and then everybody was kind of had their spot, in a sense. There wasn't necessarily a place where you could say that, oh, I have privacy, or I have this or that, and of course the bathroom, you just had to time it right because it was a revolving door, et cetera, with that too. And then of course going back to the yellow pickup again as being part of that too was important. It's a 1979 Chevy Cheyenne that allowed us to navigate through, and it was our way of being able to have access into coming into town, have access to, to food, have access to travel, and was the one piece I can say that was stable for us, that was very important. I will also add that we still have it to this day. My dad still has it in the back, and I keep telling him not to give it away because that is going to be mine, and just because it has such a significant, piece for me in itself. But the other thing I would call out is that as we were moving around and finding these places to stay, one of the pieces that we accessed was, again, our trusted messengers. There was always elders within the group that can say, oh, I heard so-and-so is leaving to go to work for somewhere else, therefore their housing is available. And then it's like race to see who could get dibs on the better housing to work your way up, in a sense, if you could, even if it was just to live there for a short period of time, to be able to have access to a better living conditions. One short story I remember is that it was so cold that my mom would put this plastic around the windows to make sure that the wind wouldn't come into the trailer. And it was our way of being able to do, to just be able to keep as warm as we can the trailer where we lived in. So there was different pieces that we learned how to adapt to, I guess, in the sense, to be able to handle that. Now, I would say that if someone came out and visited us by the standard of whether we were at risk, there would have probably been a concern, most likely about our living conditions. And somebody could even say, was CPS involved at that point? And I would say that we have to assess the situation globally. Yes, there's at-risk factors here, but at the same time, there was a lot of love. There was a lot of attention. There was a lot of community support. There was other factors that our checklist may not necessarily reflect, that then balances out to say, how did I support this family to continue to be intact? Because by pulling these children out of these conditions, may not necessarily be ideal to the situation. And so just calling that out a little bit as we're looking at our traditional approaches. The next slide that I'd like to speak to had to do with education. And this one is key also. So one of the pieces that I remember since I was young that our parents used to always say was that education was key. That when coming to this country, if we could at least at a minimum be a good student, right? And be able to go to school and be a good student, that their whole point was to make sure that the five of us, my five siblings, were not gonna go back and work in the fields like my parents did and like my grandparents did, right? So breaking that cycle in a sense, they had this mental note that that was important. It was difficult though to be in the education system for different reasons. One was because we weren't in school a whole lot. We were pulled out to travel, to be able to go back to Mexico in a certain time period. And then the second piece, with the education system is that English is not my first language. And English is so difficult in so many ways. It's not as loyal as Spanish. Spanish has very few exceptions to the rules. English, there's so many exceptions to the rules. And so thinking about how long it took me to just be able to learn English, to be able to read English and communicate in English was a struggle for me. I think it wasn't until middle school that I was finally reclassified in a sense into not being pulled out for supports. But even then, you're in a disadvantage because all your curriculum and your material is in English. And although I love math, because math is something that my parents can help me with at home, right? Because math is math. We struggled a little bit with the education system because it wasn't the math that was being done in the schools. But at the end of the day, I still got the same result, right? The same answer, but we just maybe did it differently. And so there was definitely a coming to different worlds in regards to that education system, where at one end we knew that was a great equalizer in so many different aspects, but it was very difficult to obtain even when you're growing up with all the disparities that existed within my family. And supports that were traditionally set for us were not necessarily as helpful to advance us as much as we did. What shifted for me in regards to this is that at the time, California State University of Sacramento had a program very similar to the one at Fresno State, but it went one step further. And what it did is that they had a counselor under the College Assistant Migrant Program. And what that counselor did is that he went to the rural communities and targeted, for instance, the oldest of the family. So I was the oldest of my five siblings. And the idea is that they would mentor you. They would target you and they would mentor you. And then they would also speak to your family to talk about the opportunities of higher education. And then when you would onboard into the high school, they were there to support you about letting you know about the A through G and all the stuff that my family was not aware of. And they spent probably, I want to say, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade were very instrumental for me because Tony Ortega was there to target me and a few others and say, yes, you have to read this book. You have to do this. Introduce me to the love of reading. Introduce me to the free library where I can have access to stuff that we didn't know. Introduce my parents to things that they didn't know. He had to have meetings with my family and other families in regards to talking about these supports. He would have separate meetings with us, and then he would have individual meetings with us also. So it was just an informal wraparound in a sense of services to talk about whole family, whole child before the concept was even vetted, right? Because dual generation, working with the families and then working with the children at the same time with different supports, et cetera. So that allowed then us to be knowledgeable in regards to the education system. Still struggled in regards to getting through, graduated from high school, got into Sacramento State, and camp was there, of course, to support us. The difficult thing when you get to the education system, even once you pass high school, is that higher ed is a different world especially for us, that we were very used to living in communal settings. To go from a communal setting where you're with your aunties and your parents and everyone there, and then all of a sudden you are now, in a sense, into this bigger world, was a big leap, a huge leap. And, definitely struggled a lot that first year, I think, in regards to Sacramento State with me. I ended up transferring into Fresno State and continuing my degree, and that's what brought me into Fresno. And so since the Central Valley has been my home, in a sense, I'm a transplant, and appreciate the Central Valley support that I've received moving over. But it did take me about 10 years to get through that BA. And it was a very long 10 years. Not deny. It was very difficult. And again, couple reasons again. English. My writing was awful. Not even going to hide it. It was awful. And not knowing the resources that existed there. Again, I also was a young mother. I had Alexis very young, and so starting school, stopping school, dropping a class because I didn't have childcare, going back, to beg the professor to take me in, taking Alexis to my finals sometimes, not ideal, not ideal. And so that was definitely different. But I did say that, and I mentioned this about the Central Valley continuing to provide that village approach for me that I had within my family, was that I had a few people at Fresno State that saw me and knew that knew that they needed to reconnect with me, and they continued to reconnect with me every time I dropped out and they didn't see me the next semester. Then they would say, "Where are you? Why aren't you taking classes? I don't see you taking classes." And then I would have to go through academic probation and do the walk of shame and send the paperwork in, and if you haven't done it, it's not pretty at all. And try to explain your life experience, to someone who probably reads many of these, and you become, like somebody previously says, a number versus a person of, are they worthy to stay in the education system or not, right? And so after 10 years of that, of going back and forth, I was able to achieve that BA that I think made a significant difference in regards to that, and it was in teaching in liberal studies. That I wanted to make sure that I continued to be able to be a teacher. So let's go on to the next slide. The other piece, I touched on the English, because I think that English is a huge barrier for a lot of our families. It was for my family and for me. And so, but what we do bring to the table is the opportunity of a home language. Home language for me is Spanish. That's my native language and my first language. And what we look at is that there's a lot of capita for children and their families to maintain that home language. I know that up to now, California was an English-only state for up to Proposition 58 a few years ago, but the voters recognize this. The voters recognize that now California is not, and that multilingualism is very important to maintain for all our children. And for the children that don't have access to that second language in their case, the multilingualism is also supported for them too, because we know that children are more than capable of picking up, multiple languages at a very young age. Our European partners know this, because quite a few of them speak multiple languages. And it's not a if you're going to speak or what's the detriment of that. It's just embedded into the system and into what they have. And so we need to take a step back and see what supports we're doing. One, to make sure it's language access, meaning that our families firsthand can understand the information in their home language. But second, from the moment that that baby is in, that the parent and the family is pregnant in utero, celebrating with the talk, read, sing in their home language. Right? English is good, and I don't want to ever take away from that, because we are more than capable of doing it all. But want to make sure that we re-emphasize that that is a capita that a lot of our children and their families bring, and we have to make sure that we're figuring out ways of how to contribute that and how to celebrate that and lift that up. And we've done a good job in the few years of changing the narrative to say that the child would get confused, that the child will struggle, but we have to make sure we re-examine those myths, because they're myths. When intentionally done, that is not right? And my doctorate's in this area, so I speak very passionate about this topic even more too. But want to make sure that we are calling out the multilingualism that exists in our families, the cognitive advantages that go with that multilingualism, the connection to their identity, social, emotional, which are the building blocks of our children, and the connection that they have with their elders and who they are as a person by honoring that home language to pass on those stories for them. And so very important to recognize that as we're doing this work. And in our case, me, my cousin, and my brother all speak the Spanish home language, but we went through difficult times at moments where we lost our recess in school for speaking our home language because we didn't know enough English to communicate. And so it was definitely challenging when you're getting a message that you're not important and that your home language is not important with those types of punishments that children have experienced in the past. Let's go to the next slide. So there is a bridge here, and there, of course, my niece and her friend are there, and I pull this because there's two ways that we can look at the aspects of the ACEs scores that our families bring when we're working with them. And one aspect is the black and white. We can recognize them for these disparities that they bring to the table, and really try to figure out how to best support them. Or we can flip that, which is the second photo that is there in regards to in color, and recognize that in addition to those ACEs scores, there's a lot of resilience and a lot of capita that they bring and contribute to that conversation and can walk alongside you to give you the privilege to hear their story, know who they are, and support who they are, and meet them where they are, right? So assuming that we a lot of times don't know best for our families, but they do. They do. It's that relationship that we uplift to recognize how to bring those informations out and take away the pearls in those discussions. And I know I frequently do when I interact with individuals and families in this work that we do. So let's go to the next slide. So tying that up a little bit more on the previous slide and speaking about the unconscious biases that we may bring to the table for one reason or another, we have to take a step back to talk about how this work is multi-generational. And I touched on that a little bit about the example of what that counselor did when he came out to meet with my family, meet with the community in a sense, because there was a group of us that were targeted, meet with the group of us as middle schoolers, and then individually work with us too. And although it was one person doing the work, please know that that work can't be done alone with one person. And therefore, being able to know what is happening within the community. So even though Tony was not part of the River Delta, he knew. He knew that the firefighters delivered the cheese and made sure, and the food. And so he made sure that they knew who from the community needed it. From his site visits that he did and connected with them. He also knew in regards to when they had one event at the school where the farmers would donate clothes, specifically clothes from their children. And then he would make sure that he would let the families know, so we would go, and then the families would look at stuff and be able to provide us some clothes. So we had some clothes there, and so it was another way of being able to pass that on. I think it was difficult at times because obviously kids recognize their own clothes when someone else is wearing it, and so I know it happened a couple times that I was a little bit embarrassed about, but it was what we had. It was what we had, and so therefore, having that opportunity of connecting with the resources that are out there and knowing what it is gives us the opportunity to walk alongside our families in itself to do this work, to make sure that every child, in this case my niece Isla sees herself as a superwoman, which she is, and my daughter there on the other side, preschool graduation, knowing that that is important with that multi-generational work. And then my mother in the middle with me, right? Just holding me up to make sure that to make sure that, you know, that I'm able to take that photo to document the moment where they have so much dreams and aspirations for me and my siblings to do this work together itself. I think it's important to see that work together. Just go to the next slide. So let me fast forward now to what I'm up to. So fast forward a little bit on my story itself. I did finish that BA, like I mentioned, painfully in 10 years. After finishing the BA, I discovered I really wanted to teach at the time and thought that was what I was going to be doing. So I went on a fast track and did my master's in credential, struggled with my credential, couldn't pass that darn CSET. I think I failed it multiple times. And there was even a joke that the testing agency was going to send me a gift basket at the end of the year for keeping them in business because I could not pass it. It was like 1 or 2 scores. It's just awful. But, you know, found a tutor that supported me to get, you know, to, again, be able to teach me how to take tests. That was another piece that I didn't know of because there was an art to taking tests too. And then was able to pass it. And then after achieving that, the master's, the other piece that I would say that was important was that our family had significant mental health. And the mental health was significant where a dear loved one who has bipolar and was not treated because of the lack of access to health could be at times maybe even borderline abusing because of the way they felt towards, you know, the siblings and et cetera. And so my desire of wanting to understand that individual and wanting to repair that relationship led me then to do an infant family mental health certification through the Napa office, which is a sub-office at the time with the University of Boston, Massachusetts. And so I did that for a year and a half. It was very significant in quite a few ways because we really were able to understand that mental health is something that is more common than what we think. It's something that is not labeled a lot of times, and it's something that traditionally my particular culture sometimes denies in a sense, or provides oh, you know how they are, you know, and then just normalizes it in a sense. And there is a part that understands that we like to normalize the behavior, but there's another part that says that if we had the proper health insurance, if we had the proper clinicians that were bilingual, bicultural, we would probably be healthier in some aspects in regards to this area. And so a plug that is something that we want to continue to do because it's very important for families to do, and very unique to find clinicians who understand the culture or of the culture and also can speak the home language and communicate effectively with the families. And so very important there too. And so after going through that, recently I finished my doctorate, which I've mentioned, in education focused around, my dissertation was around bilingualism with our preschoolers itself, and doing that piece there. But I really have a strong passion for the early childhood field as a whole, based on just my background on this, and understand that especially those first 5 years of life, how important it is for that child to be able to be in a loving community, supporting families, and what that magic looks like between adult and a child, whether that adult is is the family member or someone else that can see that child and love the child and celebrate the child for at their developmental level, I think is pretty critical. And so fast forwarding to where I am now then, so there's been a couple things that has happened in the last couple years, and there's been a lot of legislation and support in regards to early childhood. And we've had quite a few legislator advocates at the state level as well as at the federal level. We have our champions like First Five, who's always at the forefront of this, as well as our advocates across the field. And so as part of the master plan of early childhood and some other reports like the Blue Ribbon Report and a early childhood enactment, there was, going back to my first slide, there was an opportunity to move these early childhood services from the Department of Education into the Department of Social Services. With that opportunity came a different lens of being able to think about what that family's experience is. We recognize that when families come for our services for childcare specifically, or some type of services around early childcare, that is just one of the pieces they bring, right? So they may come into our doors asking for, I need someone to help me care for my children so I can maintain my job, right? Maybe, you know, this phrase, or I want to go to school and I need someone to care for my child, just like what I experienced. You know, maybe the way that they come into our system. But we realize that when you unpack that person and you have a conversation with that person and the person's able to share what is happening, you realize that that is not the only need, and that there is a lot more needs in the family than just that. That's just the tip that you get to be privileged to be the entry door to. And so as a result, as part of these programs moving to Department of Social Services, the idea is that in the future there'll be an eligibility hub. And the eligibility hub then will be a family that will be able to leverage and apply for services, tell their story once, not multiple times. So not going to First Five to tell their story, not going to WIC to tell their story, not going to Cache to tell their story, finding the right door to even go to a lot of times, right? But instead they go through an eligibility hub through the state. And after they do the eligibility hub, then they'll be able to qualify for multiple services if the family chooses to, because not all families would like to. But if they do, that one application would be able to provide those multiple services for them to ensure that they have then those comprehensive supports to be able to, you know, really support that family for where they are. And so that's one of the reasons, especially why we know that it's important to bring over these early care dollars into the Department of Social Services, to have that system of support for the families themselves and their children, you know, and see it within that system itself to support them, which we know. The other piece that we're doing, if you haven't participated as part of our stakeholder meetings, is that we model the language access. So we have every of our stakeholder meetings are done in multiple languages, which includes in Mandarin and Spanish, of course, English, ASL. So they're American Sign Language. So there's different languages that we utilize that we will have simultaneously during the presentation. These meetings are done quarterly. So though the transition officially happened July 1st, I think I got appointed by the governor in March. And then but mine still needed Senate confirmation for my position too. So then in July 1st, we brought in the CD transferring staff, and I want to say there was about maybe 50 of them or so. Shameless plug, I'm hiring in case anyone would like to have a job with the state. Look at, you know, cow jobs. And so we have some vacancies that we want to be able to fill. And then from there, then we made sure our short-term goal was to make sure that everyone that had contracts with the Department of Social Services had now those same contracts seamlessly July 1st to start services with us, which was our first primary goal. Our secondary goal from there then is the invitation of everyone to continue to give us stakeholder feedback about how we can do better. What are the bottlenecks in the system? You know, stakeholder feedback is key for us to be able to know what to take on and what to relook at, because there's an opportunity with this transition to reimagine some pieces of this work. And so definitely want to make a plug for that too on that. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm pleased to share that I was appointed, or I was voted in by the Senate, what is it, probably feels like all the days are running together, maybe about a month ago, officially in my position. Significant because now we are the founding parents of a new division within the State Department, and significant because it's a Central Valley person. You know, and as you know, we need to make sure that our Central Valley voices are represented within our appointments with both our governor's office as well as our legislator office, because the voices of the Central Valley are very unique. A little bit different than our counterparts as part of the other parts of the state. So just want to call that out because I think that that's a significant piece of this. Fast forward, because I do want to share, to circle that out in regards to being a young mother. So Merced, I have this very special connection in many ways. And one specific piece is that my daughter was a soccer player, and she was able to be she was able to play soccer for UC Merced here. She graduated from UC Merced within the course of the 4 years, played soccer for the 3 years of it, of those, because the last year she focused more on her studies. But UC Merced really provided her the opportunity to understand what she wanted to do next. And they positioned her well enough for her to be able to apply for directly from a BA to a doctorate program. And she was able to get a full ride in a doctorate program back east. So happy to share that she is back east. She will be finishing at 25 years old, we think, her PhD in education with emphasis in infants and toddlers development, and in the spring of next year. And I am internally grateful to not only the Child Development Center, which Danielle is part of there and was a great mentor to her, but the UC Merced faculty and staff, and many of you that were part of my village that when I called, and I think I called Rosa Barragan from the Office of Ed and said, Alexis is coming, can you just keep an eye on her if something happens and I can't get there on time or something, think about back our community, where we grew up. And everyone was more than welcoming to be able to help us and support Alexis in her work and what she's doing now. And so, so just stand here as a proud mama for her accomplishments, but recognizing that her success is our entire success because of the individuals such as you guys and others, many others that were able to support us, see who we are, and continue to envision our work as moving forward to fulfill more than what our ACES scores was at the time, right? And so let me go to the next slide. I'm wrapping up. So my father is 71 years old, and he still works in the fields. He chooses to work in the fields. He loves the lay of the land, loves everything to do with the field work, and all the grandchildren always, it's customary for them to go out and ride the tractor with him or pick the tomatoes or the pears, depending on what is in season. So then they continue to know about the greatness that Papi and Grandma contribute to us and to them, and also understand the importance that although we grew up in these difficult times, that from different lenses we can look at it one way, and in essence, those did not define who we were, and that, my papi and my grandmother continue to be the most wisest individuals that I think I have ever known in my entire life, and continue to be significant in my life moving forward. So with that, I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to my story, my vulnerabilities that I brought to the table, but also the capita that I hope you are able to recognize in other families that you're serving and the children that you serve within this work. Thank you.
Question, yes.
thank you for sharing your story with us too. You know, it's important to talk about our stories within our communities, so individuals can see themselves and can recognize, you know, the value that they can contribute as they're hearing our stories and reflect. So great question in regards to it. And I can say that it's multi-layer, right? When you're thinking about the different individuals that impacted my personal journey. I think about my parents, right? Part of that immediate circle, and how significant role that they had in regards to ensuring that we were doing our best as we could in regards to schooling, in regards to getting us to school. Barrier here for us is my mom didn't drive. So you could just imagine us living in an island, probably about an hour and a half away from Sacramento, and my mom having to figure out how to navigate, how to access other supports in order to be able to bring us to what we needed, you know, in regards to access for services, whether it was immunization or whether it was health visits, et cetera, with that too. And so I think of my parents as one of those key pieces for me. The other key piece for me would also be the extended family, that when there was an absence of a family member, for one reason or another, an extended family would jump into that role. And so as I look at my aunts, for example, and my uncles, who are my dad's siblings, and the significant role that they had with us in regards to supporting us and making sure that we were able to have a childhood, that although we were in the field playing with dirt, they would come out there and play with us and throw dirt at us too, or, you know, and just, you know, be able to have us enjoy our childhood. So I think that that's important too. And then the other piece that I would say, and I, you know, even though I had the community there of the River Delta to always support my parents, I would also say that there is some vulnerability about asking for help. Sometimes when you leave that area and then you go, like when I came into Fresno, but you do have to ask for it, because there's plenty of people there that was key to me that were not related, that probably would never have known who I was without me reaching out to them and just saying, I'm on academic probation, what am I gonna do? And then they've decided to really support me through that piece. And so too many to name for sure, but know that it's important to have multiple people in that family's life like they were for me. So thank you for that question.
One more time, a round of applause for Dr. Jaime Milheim. Wow. We were in the same cohort. This lady,
practice group.
yes, remember when you were kids and you would go by and you would see the real placid water, and the wise people would tell you, I know that looks calm, but don't jump in there because the current is quite swift. That's this lady right here. That is her spirit. Appearing so calm, but there's a passion and a drive and a swiftness that's occurring just beneath the surface. And we are better to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
Fantastic. Thank you. One more time. Wow. We were in the same work group together. And she was tricking us. She was so quiet, right? But that's that calmness, right? That's that calmness that comes with that power and that strength. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm boiling over with pride with, you know, where you are today. Fantastic. So pretty soon we're going to do a quick check-in with the artist, or that's coming. Okay, they're continuing to work on that project. I think I'm going to talk now about our lunch. Okay, so our lunch will be provided by Table 59, previously known as Covas. Also, the afternoon breakout sessions, okay? So you'll have an opportunity this afternoon to participate in different breakout sessions with different discussion leaders from your online connection. Please do that. Check that out. There's lots of impactful conversation that's happening there. That's that engagement that we miss, right? And please connect in there and deliver and participate and bring your knowledge and your wisdom and your conversation and your thoughts to those breakout rooms. So thank you very much. So, yes.
Hello, everyone. Before we move forward, there is a special treat that we had unplanned. However, we are going to incorporate it now before we move forward. We had one of our hands-on heroes earlier with such a moving story, Jesus Haro, and we have a special guest here from United Way who is here to present Jesus Haro's business with a gift. And so we wanted to take a moment before we moved forward and went to lunch in order to make time for this special award.
Hello, my name is Juan Martinez. I'm the Language Care Program Manager for Language Care under the guidance of the United Way of Merced County. And it's an honor to be here today. I've learned a lot and really look forward to next year's presentation. Someone who, or a couple of youth that I'd like to recognize really quickly before I present this. I'd like to give a big shout out and thank you, Coach Haro, for everything that you do for the kids. But just here in Merced County, last month, 2 of our local youth fighters had an opportunity to travel to Missouri and compete for the Silver Gloves National Competition and won. We have 2 new champions out of Merced, and I'd like to give a big shout out to Renee Hulk Martinez and Jaden Chavez for being the new 2021 Silver Glove National Champions. And with that said, on behalf of the Language Care Program under the United Way, I'd like to present Coach Jesus Haro with this $10,000 donation to his gym. Wow. If I could get a big round of applause for Coach Jesus. Thank you again. Big round of applause if you could for Coach. Thank you, guys. It's an honor.
Thank you so much. Give it up one more time for the United Way and Coach Haro. Hey, Coach, I know how that is, man. I know that your significant others will appreciate you getting that $10,000. Because I know how it is. Everywhere you go, you're thinking about your kids. So if you're at Kohl's or if you're at Ross, oh, I got a kid in my program that wears a 13 and a half, right? So you're buying those shoes, right? I know how that is. So thank you so much. At this time, we want to bring to the stage Patty and Ricardo from the Urban Collective. Urbanist Collective. And they're going to share where their art is so far. They've been working on it based on our words from our ACEs. I don't know if you know Patty, but I've known her for quite a while, and she is just a true gem for us to have one of our local artists, just passionate about her work and so gifted and talented. Do you want to say something?
Sure.
Sure?
So do you want to hold them up?
Yeah, I'll hold one up.
Hello, my name is Patty from Urbanist Collective, and this is my fellow collective member, Eddie Rodriguez. We're both Merced residents, and we're excited to be painting during the Children's Summit. So we're painting 2 paintings that are kind of opposite from each other based on the responses from the audience so far. And our paintings depict a child or a person who's suffered from trauma that Eddie is painting. And mine is the depiction of a resilient heart. And by the end of the summit, you'll be able to see the artwork and how it's developed over time. And then so we are painting a heart with flowers growing out of it. And the trauma heart will have flowers using like the emotions that are felt when a child or an adult suffers from trauma, and the more lively heart will have flowers that are resilient, hopeful, faithful, etc. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow. Very good. It reminds me of, you ever heard that term, the rose growing through the concrete? Yeah, that absolutely reminds me of that. And, you know, I'm so grateful for where we are now with understanding trauma and understanding our children and the importance of recognizing trauma in their life and providing safety and building that resilience, you know, and how important that is. I think of a time when, I think of myself being raised in a time where, as kids, you didn't have no opinion. You don't have no opinion because you don't pay no bills, right? You don't pay no bills, so you don't have no opinion. You just basically, your job was to be happy and obedient, right? But to be in a space where we're honoring, recognizing, and appreciating the importance of allowing our children to express themselves and to say how they feel and be heard, it's quite an evolution. It's a human evolution for us, I truly believe. So it's so grateful for me to be here with you in this amazing space. So right now, I think we're going to transition into lunch. Yes? Lunch, as I said, will be provided by Table 59, formerly Cova's. I believe there's a gift card in the bags that you can go use at your convenience. Enjoy that lunch. Enjoy yourselves. Come back this afternoon. Log in and participate in the breakout sessions. We need your wisdom. We need your experience. We need your intellect. We need your energy. We need your spirit. Children's Summit 2021, Merced County. Thank you so much.